Now, over to Eve.
Thank you, Dexter. And let me say that I have missed you all. Over the course of 16, almost 17 years, it's been very rare for me to not be in the presence of so many people whom I admire and love. And so I'm just really happy to be back. So with that, it is with great pleasure and privilege to introduce today's program presenter, Dr. Gilda Sheppard. And let me tell you a little bit about her. Gilda Sheppard is an award-winning filmmaker who has screened her documentaries throughout the United States and internationally in Ghana, West Africa, at the festival Afrique Film Festival, and in Germany at the International Black Film Festival in Berlin. Dr. Sheppard is a 2017 Hedgebrook Fellow for Documentary Film and a 2019 recipient of an Artist Trust Fellowship. Her documentaries include stories of resilience of Liberian women and children, refugees in Ghana, stories of 3 generations of Black families in an urban neighborhood, and a film ethnography of stories from folklore started by Zora Neale Hurston in Alabama's AfricaTown. For over a decade, Sheppard has taught sociology classes in Washington State prisons and is a co-founder and faculty for FEPPS, which stands for Freedom Education for Puget Sound, an organization offering college-credited courses at Washington Correctional Center for Women. Dr. Sheppard is faculty emeritus for Evergreen State College, Tacoma campus. This is what Michelle Alexander, who is a civil rights attorney and who wrote The New Jim Crow, had to say about Gilda. Director Gilda Sheppard is a gifted teacher, incisive scholar, committed activist, and a talented filmmaker who's dedicated her life to the education and liberation of poor and oppressed people, especially Black people in the era of mass incarceration. We all owe her a debt of gratitude for her brilliant work and steadfast commitment to justice. Welcome, Gilda. So Gilda, we'd love to hear your story and how your journey has led to the making of your documentaries, and primarily the documentary Since I've Been Down.
Well, thank you so much, Eve. Thank you for your punctuation of my life. The only thing that I would add is that I am a grandmother of 3 beautiful Black boys. So
beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you. It's nice to hear, this punctuation, because you realize how grateful I am for this opportunity to be extremely busy and being a creative. And so thank you so much. So my love of storytelling got me involved in being a filmmaker. When I was a little girl, I would sit in the closet with a flashlight and a mirror, a dark closet, and create shapes. And my grandmother used to say, they let me stay in there. I was always very eccentric, right? And what were you looking at? And I said, I found images, Grandma. And she said, what did they say? And so I made up something. How did they look? And I made up something else. And she would pat me on the head, braid my hair, and tell me that I am a great storyteller. So keep that close to me. So I realized the importance of proximity and of storytelling, and also how it becomes real when we make it real. It can be transformative. I had just finished a documentary in the Bujumbura refugee camp in Ghana, West African Liberian refugees. I felt like I needed to do something to give back because, back in the day, long time ago, the powers that be sent freed enslaved Africans, African Americans to Liberia to settle it for you know, colonialism. And so I felt like, I think this is an opportunity to see what I can do. And since I believe in storytelling and embracing a person's story to bring out the possibility of transformative justice, I went there very arrogantly wanting to deal with female child soldiers. And they told me right then and there, this is what we want. We want scholarships for our children. We want to learn how to be entrepreneurs. We need somebody to come in to try to heal our bodies so we can, through our cultural ways, because our bodies have been brutalized in the Civil War. And sometimes we're living in a refugee camp with people who have brutalized our bodies, and we want to be able to forgive. So please, if you can do that. So I decided to use my privilege as a PhD in a responsible way and gathered a lot of people, you know, Liberians who are outside of the camp and Ghanaians to come in and teach literacy classes. And I took from the pedagogy at Evergreen State College, Tacoma, something that Dr. Joy Hardiman and Dr. Maxine Mims has our students do the first quarter. And that is to tell their memoir, to speak it as part of the literacy classes. I think as the Black Prisoners Caucus does, start with who you are. Start with where you are. And if you can incorporate teaching and learning and understanding, and as I said, interpreting the noise through your life, there is a possibility of liberation and transformation from the wilderness that James Baldwin talks about from inside out, and let alone you'll be practicing social justice. And so I was able to do that, and it was just a phenomenal time. I created a documentary, Women Together as One, that went around to different places, France, Berlin, and a lot of other places, and then the neighborhoods of Seattle and Tacoma. And then on the last day of filming, one of the leaders of the camp, who had been a refugee for over 10 years, came to me and said, you know, Sis Gilda, the same AK-47 that you see on the streets in the Civil War in Liberia, in our children's hands, in those child soldiers' hands, are in your children's hands. And you need to do something about that. So since I've been down, our documentary emerged from my love of children. You know, anyone who's ever seen me in the classroom or seen me walking around the streets understands that Gilda Sheppard loves children, right? And so, and what the culture of punishment has done to their creativity, their ability to critically think, but it doesn't just go away, right? It's just laying there dormant, ready for someone to open the curtain and allow it to dance, to sing, to do poetry, preach a sermon, do a lecture, sing a song, all kinds of things. And so one thing led to another, and then I found myself, based on Dr. Tata Runga, who's the dean at Evergreen, Tacoma. She was teaching in prisons, and she said that she was going to get her PhD. Would I like to teach sociology classes? And so I found myself teaching sociology classes, and that's when I met some of the most brilliant people that I've ever met in my life. One of whom had been in an adult prison since he was 13. And what saved his life was community, like in what the conversation pushes, the importance of community and your proximity to community, right? And how that community can help you change the narrative that sustains this culture of punishment, right? It cannot just provide you with optimism, because I'm not into optimism, I'm into hope, you know? And so, but also it helps me to do something that makes me uncomfortable. Like when I realize I go into a place and with my arrogant things on my mind, you know, this is what I want to push. I don't think there's nothing wrong with that. You know, as a creative, going somewhere and figuring out your thesis, you know what I mean? But then once you figure out your thesis, sometimes you have to adjust that to the subject. And as Kamanti Carter says in the film, Since I've Been Down, it's one thing studying the subject. It is another thing being the subject, you know. And so that's a long answer to, and I hope I touched on that and some other things.
So Gilda, tell us about, and what normally happens once a person gives their presentation. There's opportunity for questions, comments, probing, but probing in the most respectful way. And so are you ready for that? Or are you pausing to continue? So I'm just kind of, I'm kind of taking a temperature of where you are right now.
I did this film to expand the dialogue. I mean, we think about what happened in Buffalo, right? And so we think, oh, we got him, bam, put him in prison. But then you realize in Buffalo that area, Tops Market, it was a food desert. It was a food apartheid. That's why this young man even knew where he could go because of the segregation, because of the systemic, I dare say, culture of punishment when you take food access away from a community that is particularly poor, but particularly Black and brown, particularly Black, right? So I wanted that mass murder should open up a larger dialogue. I do my film as a public intellectual, and as I think as Edward Said said, to be a public intellectual is to open up a dialogue for human liberation, you know. So I am open to dialogue. This film is to spark dialogue, to make your heart sing and see where it doesn't and why, and see our connection to this culture of punishment. So I'm open. Let's talk.
Okay, we're ready. Well, first, deepest thanks for your offering and for the sharing of your spirit in your experience that have led you to these most profound documentaries about people whom can be viewed as not important to those of us in this country. And so I will stop there and I will open it up to those of us who'd like to continue. So Dexter, your hand is up, and go ahead.
Thank you, Eve. This is not so much my question as, you know, I will have a lot more for Gilda as part of this dialogue. Thank you so much. I'd like to hear you talk a little bit more about your partnership with the people in the film. For example, your partnership with Jenny. What was that like? And I'd love to hear a conversation between you and Jenny on that issue.
Okay, hold on to your seats because Gilda and Jenny are about to talk. You know, it took me 12 years to finish this, and I was like, and I was feeling, oh my God, what are the men and women and families gonna think it's taking me so long? But I'm glad because it brought me, you know, building a community. So my relationship was with Jenny, like with many of the other people in my film. Our film was of discovery along the way, you know, and based on research, right? And to have met Jenny Parham, who is one of the most amazing activists, compassionate activists. I think she's a visionary too. I think she breathes life into what Bell Hooks says, what a visionary is supposed to do. And she says, to be truly a visionary, we have to root our imagination in our concrete reality, while simultaneously imagining possibilities beyond that reality. And that's what Jenny Parham. Jenny Parham has had a son who was in prison, and Jenny Parham didn't just show up. Jenny Parham provided the light and pathway so that other people can not just show up, but can give voice to their trauma, to their stories, and find a pathway of healing. Jenny Parham is one of my favorite teachers, and I couldn't have completed this film without the consultation of Jenny and the trust and compassion from Jenny Parham, who's with families shoulder to shoulder that she created.
Thank you, Gilda. Without Gilda, I don't know if I could have made it through a lot of what I went through with my son. My son was sentenced to 96 years in prison when he was only 18 years old. He did serve 26 years. Gilda was instrumental in helping him get released from prison. Her film that she worked on for so long, she filmed me in my house, she filmed me in prison, and very professional. Her crew came in, they always made you feel safe, even though it was a really emotional experience. Just talent, and her comfort. And then when actually Willie had an opportunity to get resentenced, Gilda was able to get part of the film where Willie was in the film. She got that to me, and I got that to the attorney, and the attorney was able to get it to the judge. So the judge was able to view part of that film before he resentenced Willie, and was so impressed with the film, so impressed with Gilda's work, so impressed with Willie's transformation while in prison and his personal growth, that the judge said in good conscience he couldn't keep Willie in prison any longer, and did an exceptional sentence downward and took 65 years off of Willie's sentence. And so Willie's home now. He's married, he's working. Yeah, but I owe so much to Gilda, and I have such a deep respect for her. And I feel like a lot of it I could not have gone through without her support. She's been a good friend and a mentor, and I love you, Gilda. I will always love you, and I will always appreciate what you did for me and my family. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. I mean, if you see Jenny at work, when Jenny's out there, she gathers letters from so many people in King and Pierce and Snohomish County when someone comes up for possibility of resentencing. Yes, Jenny did, work with her son, but Jenny understands, just like I chose Kamonte Carter as the spine of the story, she understands that Willie Nobles, her son, is like the Mississippi River, but there are many tributaries, and those tributaries have other people's names. And that's the reason why her concern, she sees it in her interest to not only fight for her son, but the whole idea of mass incarceration and what it has done to children. So you will see Jenny at so many court hearings, and also speaking in front of all kinds of councils and senators and everybody, from her heart and from her mind and from her soul. As you can tell, this is a mutual love kind of thing going on. We love each other, and I've learned so much from her. So very much. And I'm not sure how many of you have all of you seen the film, or you just like, all of you have seen the film? Okay. Because it's like, what film is this? People.
Well, Gilda, just so you know, we watched the film and we've had a full discussion with Jenny.
Oh, wonderful.
The conversation is on this.
Hey, that's what I'm talking about. Right on. Yeah.
So Christy has her hand up, and as we go through, if you could use the icon to raise your hand so I can see you better to call on you, that would be appreciated. So it looks like Christy is next.
Thank you, Eve, and thank you for being here, Gilda and Ginny and all the new people. This is good energy today. Gilda, I met you at Tupac. Do you remember the solo cup microphone trick?
Monty Carter called in. We couldn't have a microphone. She says, "Here, I got a cup." And put in there. It was like boom, boom.
I loved that conversation that day, and I was so heartened by it. I had seen the movie all by myself, which is one thing, but to watch it with people in the community and then to have a good long time afterward. I mean, it wasn't a gigantic crowd, but it was a good crowd, and it was a really good conversation. Plus, with Kamanti on the phone and Tanya was there with you,
Yes.
right? And having her there too, as someone who knew Kamanti and was in the film, was really powerful. And there was so much, I think, that it illuminated for people, not just about Kamanti's story, although that was really important and very moving, and about Tanya's story, but also about just the state of things in general, as in, I didn't know there was no parole, right? So I was thinking about that, and I know you've had other community screenings where you've had these, my friends have gone to them, but I have not been able to. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what kinds of things are coming up in those community screenings, which I think are so, it seems like such an important conversation when I was there that day.
Well, the film has sparked the connection between restorative justice and transformative justice. Understanding what folks constantly say is that your film helped to humanize, for us to see the humanity in people who we don't see, and for us to reflect on what we meant about cleaning up the neighborhood, not looking at the transformative justice, that's the systemic, the policies that keep us not thinking sometimes. And all we look at is the alleged results, like I'm afraid for my children to go to school, there's a gang member and blah, 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 but not going, where do we start the story? Do we start it when a kid picks up an AK, or do we start the story with the disinvestment in communities, the deadening of the practice of white supremacy, capitalism and patriarchy on us, and homophobia on us, and how that becomes a really toxic pathway to not realizing that our sense of being unsafe doesn't come from these children, but that their sense of being unsafe comes from a bigger systemic thing. And so what has sparked is there's been a multi-faith group that is developed of Jews, Black Christians, Muslims, and Baha'i people coming together. It was 700 folks crossed religious lines, came together. One rabbi saw the film and said, he was doing work with Christians, particularly Black Christians. And so he got them together and they saw the film, and he expanded to Muslims and Baha'i people. And then after they all saw the film, 2 days later, 200 came and they met with the legislators and representatives, and senators to look at certain bills. We're particularly involved in, what's going on with the brain science, in this time of not being able to dismantle prisons, we have to make it do as much reform as we can as we work in the street to abolish prisons. You notice I said abolish prisons, right? I am an abolitionist. I'm an abolitionist that says that we need to create a community, just like your preamble, just like your agreements, that so that we don't need prisons. So it has brought restorative, a healing pathway, because I have to look at that, but also the importance of transformative justice. We're looking at sentencing laws. We're looking at, because a lot of people don't know we don't have parole. I was talking to a senator who didn't know that we don't have parole. And I'm not pointing my finger, at this person saying that, oh, how come you don't have parole? I understand the noise. I learned from the Black Prisoners Caucus to meet people where they are and then bring them forward. I mean, if Kamanti Carter can go across to a white nationalist with swastikas and everything all over him, I mean, I wouldn't do that. I'll be like, no, and rightfully so. we have a reason to be feared. Somebody I read the other day said, it's ridiculous to say be fearless. You better have some fear, but there to do something that makes you uncomfortable. So we're looking at sentencing laws. We want to also amplify prisoner-initiated programs. Now the film is in 30,000 incarcerated people's free tablets nationally. This group called Applied Prison Data System saw the film and used their privilege in a responsible way. And nationally, this film is on their tablets, and folks have been calling from prisons to other folks in prisons. I don't know how they let that happen, but sometimes it does, right? It gets through finding hope because, a person is talking to another person. So we want to not just show the film and just say, yeah, look at the Black Prisoners Caucus. I want you to understand that there's a Black Prisoners Caucus in so many prisons. Whatever there's oppression, there is resilience. This is not something new. This is something in the legacy, particularly of Black liberation movements when we go across race lines and, even ideological lines to find where we can come together, because this is not a, zero-sum game that we are in, right? This is, we win when we understand that your liberation is tied to mine is tied to yours, and the best of us happens. So those are the kinds of conversations that have been sparked, and more conversation as you all state in the conversation leads to looking at ideas, ideals, and practices. And that's what we're trying to do. And that's what's been happening. And so, I use the film as my friend Jenny says, I put together some clips when I hear that one of the men or women are going up for resentencing. I put together some clips, give it to the family for a holiday. They give it to the attorney gives it to the judge, right? And all of a sudden you're able to see. But that's what I do as a creative. You can see and hear this humanity. Thank you for that question. I so remember you.
Okay, we have Anthony, and then Barb, and then Janine. So Anthony?
Good morning, Dr. Sheppard. It is great to see you again. It's been so long. I'm happy to see you, and much success to you. I had a question about, I love the documentary, being from Tacoma. I think it's a blessing that you made it. I love seeing, so many friends, that I haven't seen in a long time in it. And I was just wondering, had you tried to, and what barriers, if you have tried, to get the video on any other larger streaming platforms?
Oh, well, yeah, right now it's on Sundance Now. If you have Sundance Now channel, you can see it there. I hate the pandemic. It's horrible, because its impact on the more marginalized you are, But let me tell you what they did. It was able to be, digital. So it's not just the film buffs and the intellectual creatives. It was like the brother and sister on the corner could see it. I would say it's going to be at Cleveland International Film Festival. Here's the link. Here's what you can do. And folks would get together in their homes and watch it. So it was like, okay, let's make a way out of no way. And so it was great. So, but now it's on the Sundance channel. And are you ready for this? I think it's going to be on Tuesday or Wednesday. It's going to be launched on iTunes, YouTube, Amazon Prime. Blah, 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 blah. It's just taken, but it's a sign of, yeah, right on, Anthony, you're proud of me? Okay. But this is a sign of, I'm a good filmmaker. I like to use aesthetics. I don't want just talking heads. I want dance. I want masquerade, but not art for art's sake. I like visual metaphors and rest. So, I learned rhythm, from Detroit. So I learned some rhythm, right? So, and I think it's not only, it is particularly because of the authenticity and the integrity of the people whose stories I was able to embrace. But it took me so long, like 12 years, so that I got to be friends. I went from Dr. Sheppard, Professor Sheppard, to Auntie Gilda, to Mama G. And so I was able, you feel me? So I was able to go into Larry Norman's basement, right, Anthony, and use some of the archival footage that he has taken in his basement rap sessions on the street with War on the Hill. What's the brother's name who did War on the Hill? You know,
Dwayne Waller.
Dwayne Waller. He said, take this. Someone else said, take this. And I had a beautiful team who did this great research. Take this, take this. So, you know, it was a blessing. I remember I was in Cuba working in construction. You know me, I'm a revolutionary. And this guy said, we go slow because we're in a hurry. And so I was able to practice that. But yeah, Anthony, if you got Sundance now, you can see it. If not, soon you'll see it after Thursday everywhere. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Back at you, my brother.
Barb?
I have a question for Ginny, but I'd like for Gilda to answer it as well. And I'm using Ginny as an example because last time, Ginny, you came to the conversation to talk about Since I've Been Down and your son, he was in jail. And so I'm wondering, what support did he receive coming out of jail? And what obstacles did he face? And then after Ginny, I hope this is okay, but after Ginny, maybe Gilda, you could share some of that too.
I think it's interesting to say that Willie had barely any obstacles coming out. And that was because of the networking that I was able to do over the 26 years he was in prison. When he was first sentenced to 96 years in prison, I stood alone with my husband in that courtroom. And if you fast forward to his resentencing, I had 42 support letters and 16 organizations in that courtroom. It was standing room only. So I obviously, with all the networking and friends and people that I've been able to meet over the 26 years, Willie came out with a home, a job, and everything just really lined up for him. So he's working now, making $30 an hour. He's married, he's got housing. He's still not quite out of prison. He's out, but he is on an ankle bracelet until September. And so he has to document everything that he does the week before. If he's going to the grocery store, he has to document all that. He can never take the ankle bracelet off. They do UAs. They come in and check him twice a week. And he can't be late if he's supposed to be back in the house by 8 o'clock. And then in September, when he's finally off of that, then he'll still be on paper for 24 months. So even though the judge took 65 years off his sentence, he's still, and if the prison locks down, then Willie locks down. So if the prison says we're on COVID lockdown and no one's going anywhere, there's no movement, Willie's not allowed to move either, not even to the grocery store. So but he's free. And he's content and he's happy because he says he's home, he's free, and he's not spending 96 years in prison. So he's doing good. Yeah. Thank you for asking that.
Thank you.
Isn't that wonderful? You know, that's I think also interpreting the noise, but there's still noise because he's still, as Michelle Alexander, is the invisible cage of incarceration once you get out, right? And not everybody is as fortunate as Willie Nobles has been. I was talking to Tanya Wilson, and she said, she came home, she lives with her family, she's doing fine, you know, she has a very good partner. But the whole dust of incarceration is still there. And you can just put your finger on the shelf of that, the shelf that looks good, and look at all that dust, right? And so both Ta and Willie are fortunate. However, they're still healing, right? You know, there's all of that. And she talks about that. And I dare say there's a gender thing going on too. It's, you know, when a man goes to prison, who takes care of the children? When a woman goes to prison, who takes care of the children? Yes, it could be the grandparents, but oftentimes it's the state. And what does that do? So this is a beautiful story of building community and the wonderful work that Jenny and all of us are doing and have been doing, but also to understand that, you know, out here in the so-called free world, that's the reason why I have masquerade in my film. It's oftentimes a masquerade, you know, and that we need, there's so much work, you know, because as an abolitionist, I'm not saying open up the door and let everybody out. I'm saying create a situation, a community where, I mean, many of you said something about when your 3 words was about, I can't remember, but issues right there in Tacoma. You know, some kind of building and something else, something about treaty rights and all those things, that your 3 words that talked about the contradictions out here are extremely important, and have a not a dotted line, a straight line connection to the alleged idea of re-entry from prison. There ain't no song and dance, my dear friends. You know, even if you come into a beloved family. One guy told me, and I'm not saying that slow fade into glory, because you see my film is not slow fade into glory. It's like the triumph of the human spirit, because I'm not into like, oh my God, it hurts so good. Nah. I'm talking about how the subject can liberate themselves to liberatory education, not just reading, writing, arithmetic, but looking at themselves and culture. Okay, that's enough, Gilda.
Wow. Janine.
Well, hello. I did get to see the film on the conversation, so I did get to hear you talk, Jenny. And you know how there's sort of degrees of awakening as you become more aware of the world and the issues. That was another awakening for me. It was such a powerful documentary, and your story was so powerful. I think you, Gilda, and you, Jenny, are very powerful women that can move things. So I want to thank you for that. And I think, Jenny, as a mother, I can't think of someone that you should win the Mother of the Year award. So just in case you haven't, that's something that should happen. I do have a question, and it has more to do with how we change the laws and policies, because I was curious, in our state, what have you found in terms of trying to like get rid of bail or get rid of the god awful thing they have to wear in their ankle after they get out, or making sure there is parole? I mean, those are all things that are so, to me, just need to go away, because it's like they never want to let go of the person that has paid their dues. And of course, they always, I think, over sentence people. And I think that's been an atrocious thing for years and years. So do you find that, like in our state, that the legislators are open to some of those changes that to me seem like a no-brainer?
Can I tackle that one?
Yes, either of you.
I do want you to weigh in on this too, Gilda. I believe, and a lot of people will say no, but I believe our state's a little bit more progressive than other states. And we're seeing a lot more of the judges that are reading all the support letters. And the reason I did the support letters was because something the judge said at Willie's resentencing. He said, in all his time on the bench, he had never seen that kind of community support for anybody. And that really resonated with me. I said, we have to continue to do this. We have to show up as community and let the judge know that community is welcoming these individuals back. So we're seeing more and more judges that are reading the letters, actually reading the letters. We're seeing the language change on a lot of the judges, that they are looking at youthfulness as a mitigating factor, that they're saying that some of these younger people that were incarcerated are redeemable. So we're seeing, and we're court watching now. We're making sure that we go into these courtrooms and we watch the judges and watch the prosecutors and even the defense attorneys. We want to hold them accountable. We want them to know we're there and we're watching. As far as the legislator goes, we do, we do have parole as far as we have the ISRB, which is parole for only sex offenders and juveniles and people that were sentenced before 1984. But, like Gilda says, we don't have parole for the whole population of incarcerated individuals. We have a really progressive Senator Mangra Dingra. She is going to be working this next legislative session on bringing back parole to everybody. And so once that comes, I would hope that every one of you is signed in to vote,
Yes.
to vote yes, because we need that. We need that. We need that, shorter sentences. As far as the mentality of the legislators, we're seeing more. I'm seeing that because I'm an alternate on the Washington Criminal Sentencing Task Force. I'm an alternate, and I sit in on those conversations and sit at the table for that. And we're seeing more and more of the prosecutors. It's heavily packed. The Washington State Criminal Sentencing Task Force is heavily packed with judges, prosecutors, sheriffs. There's only a few family members that are at the table, but it's heavily packed with those authoritative groups. And so we're seeing them change. We're seeing some of them coming around. Prosecutors, WAPA, Washington Association of Prosecuting Attorneys, they're starting to look more at options for our incarcerated individuals to have a second review and a second chance. And that's all we ask. We ask that some of these people, like Kamonte Carter, who is phenomenal. I used to volunteer inside the prison, and Kamonte is he's the superstar. Yeah, right. So he deserves, we all know, we've seen them, he deserves a second chance. He deserves that review. But we also have to remember that there is more people in prison, just like Kamonte. Like Gilda said, Gilda and I are called aunties and Mama Jenny. They call me and say Happy Mother's Day to me. There are so many that deserve a second chance because they're putting in the work of personal growth and transformation. They're not just sitting in prison playing dominoes for years or going out. They are putting in, they're educating, and education's transformative. Gilda knows, she's been teaching for years.
Yeah.
And that's all I got to say. But Gilda, what do you have to say on this?
Yeah, do you want to weigh in, Gilda?
I think, Jenny, you are pretty comprehensive in what you're saying. Yes, they say keep your eyes on the prize, hold on, and that's what we have to do. But when we keep our eyes on the prize, as Jenny said, we have to show up visually. There's something, and use your audio as well, and understand. And what I've learned from the men and women in prison is that to have faith that people can listen and will change. There's no cancel culture here. You disagree with me, so I'm not. No, engage that person. Otherwise, you're going to be only speaking to the choir. Not that the choir doesn't get out of tune. Let's be clear. But it's very important to show up and do those kinds of things. Jenny started an organization called Families Shoulder to Shoulder. She doesn't even have a budget. We need to contribute to Jenny's group also. And she does this. I'm just saying.
Hey,
She does this on her own gas money, all of her stationery and all of that. And she can get 40, 100 people, 100 letters, okay, for a particular individual. And what that does is public education for folks. They realize they put a name to it. It's not just legislation, it is a name. And to see all those people that Jenny organized, sometimes all by herself at a courtroom, there she is smiling in the front, right? And you realize that, okay, she done slid home like if you're playing baseball or you made a goal if you're playing soccer. You don't realize all that work people had to do to kick that ball in that net or shoot it in a net or kick it over a goal. Family shoulder to shoulder need support because they are making it happen. I just want to say that, you know, she doesn't have a 501c3. She does, I mean, she doesn't have a website. She got a Facebook page, but that hasn't stopped Jenny. Willie is out, but that hasn't stopped Jenny. Her public education that she's doing for so many people cross race, cross ethnicity, cross ideological lines has been phenomenal, has been, you know, fired in the kiln of love and belief in folks. I just have to tell you what Jenny comes in looking all bright-eyed and Brucey tail like, I've been rested. No, Jenny's been up late at night.
I just want to say real quickly, I finally got a website.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do, and I appreciate what you said about my liberation is the other person's liberation. And so I go travel and meet with mothers, grandmothers, and share my story with them, and they share, and I help prepare them. I just went to the east side and talked to a grandmother 2 days ago, sat with her in her home for 2 hours, and she didn't have, I mean, I was the same way when I first started out. I didn't have a clue about anything. She didn't either, and she didn't know the first steps of taking her grandson through clemency process. What is the process? And I said, I took her step by step. This is what you need to do. And once you get a clemency, once you finally get a clemency date, that's when family shoulder to shoulder comes in. Okay, that's when we come in, and we'll get support letters gathered for you. We'll show up, we'll pack the courtroom. But until our part comes in, you do this and this and this and this, because sometimes the attorneys, they'll defend your child or your grandchild, but they don't tell you what to expect. I have studied the Clemency and Pardons Board. I know all the members and what they expect from you when you go to clemency, and I'll share that with the families. This person is going to only care, this person on the board is only going to care about the infraction history. This person is only going to care about this. And so, and they'll ask me questions like, well, will we find out the day of the clemency hearing? Will we find out on that day? Yes, you'll find out on that day. And so my liberation is their liberation. I want mothers and grandmothers to experience. One person said to me, Jenny, I would have just got my son out and just been done with it. I would have, got mine, and that would have been it. And I just couldn't do that because of the fact, probably because of the fact I did volunteer inside of the prisons, and I have many more sons in there. There's many more that deserve a second chance. So that's why I meet with mothers and grandmothers and try to get them prepared for hopefully the same wonderful outcome.
Yeah, truly. Just a question about I think Christy put your website in the chat. So can we donate to that? Is that something you have a donate button?
Yeah.
If you need money, that's, we can always help you that way. Let us know. And also just a reminder to all the conversation that one way we can help is to do lobbying, help with the bills that are trying to be passed, and you can lobbying's kind of fun. You learn to do it, and it's not bad. I've done so that's something else maybe the conversation could do, because this is such an important issue. And thank you so much, both of you. My heart goes out to both of you, and good luck.
Thank you.
So are there other comments or questions? Let's see, I see Diana and then Dexter. I don't know if, okay, so we'll have Diana and then we'll have Dexter and then I have a question. So Diana.
Okay, what are some alternatives for prisons? You say do away with prisons. So what happens when you do away with prisons? Because I have some relatives that, I'm the only one dealing with them, and it's fearful for me to think that this person who chooses to do some things that could be dangerous. What are the alternatives?
Gilda?
Okay, got your pencil and your paper? Let me tell you. No. There's no definitive answer to that. Okay. I think what happens is our consciousness and our awareness of what we are doing out here to maintain a kind of culture of punishment and the alleged illusion as the need for prisons. Prisons don't work. It is what happens in the building of community, particularly with prisoners, that work. So where do we start the story? Because to be a prison abolitionist doesn't say you open up the door and you let everybody out, right? Or it doesn't say that if you commit a crime that you can't be accountable. But our accountability has to do with the culture of punishment, and punishment doesn't work. It hasn't worked. Now we can say you can punish. I remember when I was a kid, I said, well, if when my mama punishes me, says that I can't stay up and watch television for blah, 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 that, that lasts longer than if she spanks me, right? But think about that kind of punishment. That kind of punishment is not like you're going to be locked away. That kind of punishment is not punishment. It is accountability to your time and what are you going to do with it. So I think that it's not just, it's a theory of practice. There's not like if we close all the prisons, what's going to happen? We need to create mechanisms for accountability and for safety for people. There are some examples in the Nordic places, and Sweden and places where there are models, and I think one in Hawaii at a woman's prison, where these kinds of prisons where there's punishment, where there's solitary confinement, that the United Nations says is cruel and unusual punishment. You shouldn't do it. Now in at Clallam Bay or Stafford Creek, if you as an incarcerated person has diagnosed with COVID, you go to this place that looks like a slave ship where people just one right after the other, and your cellie will go to solitary confinement because you want to keep both of them away from the general population. So prison is not just prison, it's the culture of punishment. It is the child of this culture of punishment. It is the child of white supremacy. It is the child of capitalism. I think so. It's that. And so it's not either or, like, okay, we got prisons. If we get rid of them, what are we going to do? Why don't we look at what can we do to create islands of peace? I'm telling you, this may sound ridiculous, but I'm a creative and we need imagination, right? What can we do? What can we do in a school system when 14,000 kids have a policeman in their public school as opposed to a counselor, a social worker, and all of that, right? So look at the contributing factors that lead to an outcome of crime. And so it's not like either or, it's more like, how do we create an environment where we don't need prisons, but we need accountability? How do we, as Bell Hooks says, I love Bell Hooks, she's my friend, God rest her soul. How do we make people accountable for their wrongdoing, but at the same time, be compassionate and aware of their growth? What can we do to inspire growth? As long as we have prisons, out of sight, out of mind, you can put them there.
Yeah.
Along the way of our practice, coming together in community, some of you may work in environmental racism. You give somebody a zip code, you can tell them how long they're gonna live. Come on, that's prison. That's life without parole. Here in your neighborhood, you give a zip code and you can tell people approximately how long they're gonna live and almost what you're gonna die of. You know, why is it certain urban areas have more concrete and less trees? That looks like what the reason why I have a lot of trees and visual metaphors in my film, because one guy, Vincent Sherrill, Jenny said, if I ever get out, first thing I'm going to do is sit under a tree. I said, what do you mean, Vincent? He said, because there's no trees in the yard. There's no trees in prison. You may say, I'm working environmental racism, so you work in it. Environmental science, work in it. Bring a racial equity thing. You may say, I work in recycling, work in it, and bring a racial equity to it, right? You may be a dancer, a singer, a preacher, you know, the vice president or the president of a college or whatever you do, you know, a mother, a grandmother, bring up the conversation, because it's not either or, it is the creation of something new, right? And I don't have the magic formula other than revolutionary, compassionate practice and whatever you want to do, vegetarianism, all of that.
And I also wanted to say, Gilda had mentioned Norway. We have our representative, Roger Goodman, is going to check out Norway. Norway prison system is set, the minute you walk into their prison, it is set up for you to learn how to be a good neighbor. Their prison is like apartments, and they have a grocery store in the prison, and you learn how to start being a good neighbor. You have a lot more responsibilities. We here in Washington State and in the United States, we work on the punitive system. So if you go into prison, you start with zero rights, zero privileges, and then as you work in prison, you can gain privileges here and there. In Norway, you start out with a lot of privileges and a lot of rights, and if you mess up in prison, they take them from you. So they're starting a little bit in Oregon. Oregon is starting to adopt these Norway practices. House Representative Roger Goodman is going to be in the next group that goes to Norway to check out the prisons. We have a man that sits on the Washington Sentencing Guidelines Sentencing Task Force. His name is Waldo, and Waldo just was in prison for 33 years. Waldo just came back from Norway, and so we're trying to slowly adopt these different ways of restorative justice and different practices rather than just the punitive. And it might take time, because the United States is set up on just the punitive, and instead of the redemption type of practices. But like I said when I first started talking, I think Washington State is a little bit more progressive than other states, and we are working to try to change some of the restrictions that we have here.
So we have Dexter, and then we have Pam.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eve.
May I please ask just a quick question really fast? Dr. Sheppard, would you mind repeating the last thing that you just mentioned, if you recall? It was something to the effect of revolutionary something, or if it was contemporary. Do you recall what it was? You were on a roll, and I know how it is. You're like, I don't know. I was in the moment. If anyone can, maybe.
It was in part inspired by Che Guevara, who says, you know, to be something about a revolutionary is guided by great feelings of love. I think I said a revolutionary is fired in the kiln of compassion and love, something like that. I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, revolutionary compassion is what I heard.
Revolutionary compassion. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Revolutionary compassionate practice.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you. You guys.
Revolutionary compassion. Oh, got it.
Okay.
Okay. So Dexter, and then Pam.
So my question is for Gilda. You've always been on the ground in this work, and you can't get more grounded than Kamante, Willie, Tanya, Ginny. But now with the notoriety of this film, you are in the national conversation with Michelle Alexander, Ava DuVernay, Brian Stevenson, Mariam Caban. I heard you recently with Adrienne Marie Brown and Angela Davis. Tell us a little bit about negotiating sort of grounded work in Tacoma in Washington State and our several prisons, and the work then that takes you abroad and on the national scene. How do you negotiate those distances and tensions and opportunities?
Thank you. I embrace the tensions and I try to pave a pathway to the opportunities, right? And I do that, I think, by looking at Tacoma, Washington as almost every town USA, right? Or looking at, you know, gentrification as a legacy of the Chinese Removal Act, the Indian Removal Act, looking at some of our children and families as economic refugees when I go to Ghana, West Africa, or when I was in Ghana to look at the prison system, because I also not only work with children, but also filmmakers, but also activists in the prison system, and realize how the role of colonialism, you know, has impacted this culture of punishment and neo-colonialism, because there are Ghanaians who are in leadership, right? And of these places, and I'm not pointing the finger at them, but also how if we are not responsible to the people that we vote into office, you know, that if they're not responsible to us, and our responsibility to them is to make sure, as Jenny said, that we show up and pose those difficult questions, even though we voted for them. I voted for the Clintons. They're the ones who did 3 strikes you're out and called our kids super predators. So you, after you vote, you don't sit back. And, you know, that's what the conversation was in Ghana. You know, I even know I know the economic minister in Ghana, West Africa. I knew him before he became the economic, knew him when he graduated from Yale and was blah, blah, blah. And to talk to him about those hard questions, you know. And so I think that how you negotiate is bringing up those questions in a compassionate, wonderful way and see the connection. Like I was saying that, you know, gentrification has a legacy, you know, homelessness has a legacy. Right. And it has a global legacy when we talk about what's going on with, you know, as we have solidarity, you know, with places that they're at war, but at the same time, why do we have so much solidarity with those refugees coming in and not with, you know, Ethiopian, Somalian, Haitian refugees coming in? Right. You know, how do we do that? How do we negotiate that? How do we bring up those hard questions? And from working with the people furthest down, the most impacted, I realized that there's not a script, but a possibility, and I love this about the conversation, of solidarity, not just in a preamble as you all are doing, but also in action. That it's important that I look at this as neo-colonialism in a different kind of way. I remember the sociologist, Robert Stack, who talked about the ghetto as being a colony sometimes. If you look at it, you can see characteristics of that. You know, where our cultural enclaves are no longer there, where we can speak our language, be it patois or whatever. We can smell our smells, we can love our hood, and you know, and all of that. So by making connections, I see this kind of transformation, or this kind of negotiation. And it gives me a groundwork for the film I'm doing next. So some of the guys and women in prison, you know, I haven't talked much about the women in prison, but, you know, many women go to prison with so much trauma, sexual, bodily, and that's the reason why I have crump dancing and dancing in my film, is because we hold our trauma in our bodies. Oftentimes we don't even know it. We wonder why we got this headache, or our back is out, or something's going on, you know, or we crave sugar or whatever substance, right? And so I wanted people to feel their bodies and give them a resting place, you know. So how I negotiate that is by doing what we all have in common, is to do that through story, but show it how it can be done in many different ways. And to show that even though I'm over here, there's a connection. Tacoma is every town USA. Tacoma is Liberia. Tacoma is so many different places. It's our visual metaphor for what's going on in the world. And I thank you for that question, Dexter, because I hadn't thought about that. Appreciate it. Thank you. You've always been a very good teacher of mine.
Pam?
Hello. Thank you for the talk. Thank you for the film. My question is that you mentioned healing of some sort. And I was wondering, when I go to my actions and I see indigenous kids, then I would ask them what in their culture is their way of healing, method of healing. So they will have circles of different kinds. And I was wondering if we have our kids from prison coming out, and what kind of healing would you be thinking of for them, besides just having social workers working with them, counselors working with them, going through rehab? What other kinds of healing? Because when I think about what is existing now, is the healing kind of thing that's existing now is somehow going with the existing rule of law, going with the existing ideas of neo-colonialism, actually. So I was wondering if you can enlighten me about different kinds of healing. Thank you.
Well, healing. You know, as a filmmaker, as an artist, I realized that I'm not, as one of my students mentioned to me, God, what is his name? Oh, I can't think of it. It'll come to me. He says he realizes that he's not fixing nothing. He's just engaging in the healing process, right? I think media and community is healing. You know, I was on this talk with these attorneys in New York, prosecuting and defense attorneys, and they have this group in New York, you know, for children, and they were talking about how violence and crime has gone up. However, if they deaggregate that and look at the places where incredible messengers or people who have been incarcerated are working in those communities, you can see the violence has gone down. I think that,
Wow.
and I know, who would know that, right? Because no one is looking at, you know, once, I think it's Grace Livingston, brilliant scholar and educator and very important colleague of Dexter Gordon. Grace Livingston said, I remember she says, you know, once there were stories and now we have statistics. We need to look at those statistics and unravel them and see what's going on. What are the inside stories? What are the subtexts, right? And I'm not trying to be essentialist to say, in order to counsel alcoholic, you have to have been an alcoholic, but your proximity to it is extremely important to the problem. That's what Brian Stevenson says, proximity to the, if you want to create a better world, you have to have proximity to the problem. That doesn't mean that you have to have been in a gang, but notice the culture of gang and where you are. Are you with me? I mean, is it the Republican Party, Democratic Party, blah, blah, blah. That culture of gang, wherever you are. I know I'm being really esoteric now, but But like in prisons, one of the things that the Black Prisons Caucus said, taking education and creating history. Notice they didn't say changing history; they said creating history. I remember working in Cuba, and this doctor said that, we have a theater group, we have a farm, we have a dance group, we have a museum of painting. He says, because a creative mind is a mind that is healing. And that's the reason why when a creative mind is a mind of healing. And I think that that's what happened when Dr. Gordon and Grace Livingston and the colleagues created the Race and Pedagogy. I mean, that's what you all are doing with Race and Pedagogy Conference. That's what you all are doing with the conversation. You are trying to heal yourself. That is those kinds of things. That's the reason why taking education and creating history, not changing it, creating history, has a class called Healthy Thinking. The people can talk, right? And that's the reason why, it has been a history of the women's movement to raise consciousness, to have women come together and talk about, so many issues that affect us and our bodies and those kinds of things, when Tanya was at Purdy, in the early 2000s, Purdy was the most violent prison in Washington State, the women's prison. But she and her colleagues started a group called the Women's Village. Violence went down by 50% because they paid attention to also the trauma. It's one thing to say, oh, I got this trauma, but if you're going to put it out there, you better deal with that. You got to have somebody who there's an avenue. And I think maybe the conversation isn't the conversation a healing place? It sounds like it.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's things like this that you know so well, the ability to talk, to say things that may like, oh, I don't mean to hurt your feelings, but bam, what I mean? And feel safe in that and be okay with, once you build community, be okay not to be safe. I read in this book, it's kind of arrogant title, The Dawn of Everything. It's by this archaeologist and anthropologist, two white men. A friend of mine said, oh, girl, right, two white men, The Dawn of Everything. I said, you got to read the book. It's an anthropologist and an archaeologist, and they're just talking about the different models, even during the Enlightenment, that indigenous populations created about what is justice, what is love. What is the practice of love? What is love making even? What is healing and health and well-being? It's such a beautiful book. Every sentence I go like, and it's about that thick. But every sentence, I'm just telling you, and every sentence is go like, I put it down and go like, wow. So, our enlightenment is not like back there, that enlightenment, because I take care of myself. I do yoga in the morning. I pray, you know what I mean? I do Sanskrit mantra chanting because I got a lot to do out here. And there's a lot of people who don't like the film, or don't like what it's bringing up for them. I've met too many of them, but I'm sure, my next film is going to be on this whole idea about critical race theory, and children are going to be the main subjects. They will do I know. I love your face. Look at you. That's a filmmaker's dream, where you get that kind of reactions like, okay, I'm going to do that. And I'm working with another writer, Patricia Baiko, who is a medical doctor and filmmaker from Carolyn Downs Clinic here in Seattle, Washington, and a wonderful sister named Alicia Wheel. And I always deal with the subject, like this one, that to deal with people who are incarcerated and folks around them who are incarcerated, like, families, friends, even the officers, right? Not to bring the officers out like those bad cops, but I want y'all to look at policing. It ain't that one cop. He said he could do everything. He wasn't even supervised. So you can say, oh, that bad cop. This is policing. It's not those two cops. It's a culture of policing. That stuff needs to be healed too. I mean, come on. Yes. I'm a sociologist. I believe we get socialized in these kinds of things. But anyway, as you can tell, I got the gift of gab, and I haven't been in the classroom in a long time, so I'm like, blah, 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 blah. Sorry.
I love you for it.
That's okay, Gilda.
No,
Okay.
quiet. I got a media team now, and they said you have to learn to breathe, and when you breathe, that's a pause and stop it. So I'm learning. These poor interviews that are coming up.
Thank you for that. And
Thank you for the question.
I've taken a lot of notes, a full page of notes.
Oh, get out of here.
Thank you.
So it's 10 minutes before 3, and I think we may have time for one more question or comment. And I'm going to take privilege of asking it.
Go ahead.
Gilda, you have spoken about listening to the noise. We go slow because we're in a hurry. And you've also mentioned optimism against hope, or those two. So could you speak more about, I'm coughing, so excuse, not trying to get my words out and not cough, but listening to the noise, going slow because we're in a hurry, and optimism and hope. You say you're not an optimist, you're hopeful.
Yeah.
And for those of us, I'll speak for myself, primarily, who have been in the trenches, and many of us here in the conversation are in the trenches and trying to, make a difference within a system that's hell-bent on pushing back every inch of us trying to bring about some element of change for our people. Please speak to that, to those.
Wow, thank you once again. My goodness, your punctuation of things, Eve, is just amazing. You know what I mean? You just make my heart sing that that those are the things that you highlighted and spotlighted. Thank you so much, my dear sister friend. I certainly appreciate it. And by the way, you look beautiful. I need to tell you that. Okay, so I must admit, since I've been doing this work, I been in need of, when you think about healing, spiritual kind of growth, right? And I grew up going to Catholic schools and all girls Catholic college and blah, blah, blah. But my family were Baptists from Alabama, sure enough, Southern Baptists, where the preacher would go, hey, do, 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 hey. He had a good rhythm and kind of growl when he was talking. It was just so beautiful. I was like, oh, is this rhythm and blues? Is this soul? What is this? Is this banging music? And so I went to church this morning. I joined a church, Dr. Reverend Kelly Brown at the Plymouth Congregational Church of Christ. And Dr. Reverend Kelly Brown is a beautiful Black woman. And the end of my film ends in her one of her chapels in this beautiful church that's downtown Seattle, where they're having this meeting for the Black Prisoners Caucus and all. And I said, now, if I was ever going to belong to a church, this is the church I'm going to belong to, because it does this activism work. It shows up. It does undoing racism classes. And majority of her congregation are white. Overwhelming majority. She talks about homophobia and all those other things and da 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 da. So I went to church this morning because she's going to be, and she was installed as the pastor, right? And so I said, well, I got to go. So, and I hadn't been to church just online or just in my house when I start to pray. And so then there was a minister who said, I must admit, he said, our role is to interpret the noise and understand the many interpretations of the noise, not let it deafen us, but understand that the noise is there oftentimes to keep you from listening to the possibilities and having imagination, because the audio is so overwhelming. The audio is so overwhelming that it breaks even, the sound barrier. You think about Buffalo, you think this 18-year-old white, excuse me, I'm sorry. If you understand that rhythm, you understand what I said, and you're not afraid of it, okay? And, came in and did this. Then I think about the reason why I did my film is because of my concern for children under my roof, but on children under everybody's roof. Ibram X. Kendi, who wrote about, race and racism, he says that even the conservative kids, people need to be concerned about what's going on with their children. I mean, with an 18-year-old brain not fully formed, can intentionally pick up a gun and come somewhere miles away and kill somebody. Yes, he's guilty. He needs to be found guilty. But just like when Chauvin put somebody, we found Chauvin guilty, who killed George Floyd, and we put him in prison. During that week, 6 or 7 other police officers killed unarmed Black people, right? And so I need to understand the noise and not just say it's that one and that one and that one and that one, but look at the roots of all of this. Where does it come in, and not doing critical race theory or multicultural education? That's all it's about. It's trying to make our kids not critically and creatively think, but just to see something and think that they're trying to replace me. Race, replacement of a race. Come on. To see someone who is homeless and at best give them a crust of bread and a blanket, and not realizing who is homeless: veterans, people who are mentally disturbed, people of color, poor people, on and on. And why does this happen? Why veterans? What is it when Ronald Reagan took money away from mental health, and all of a sudden we saw a lot of homeless? I mean, so we need to go slow because we're in a hurry. Someone said in the 3 words that we can end homelessness, houselessness. I believe we can. I believe we can.
In a minute.
In a minute. But we need to also have the most impacted right there. I'm not being essentialist. It's just like the film says, those, what does Mr. Zimbabwe say? He says, I dare say that many of the problems that society is trying to solve can be found in prison. Or Mary Flowers said, the people on the bridge know the answer to the problem. I'm not saying everybody under the bridge. I'm not being stupid. And then we need more than people under the bridge, but somebody's more impactful. Like I said, I went to the refugee camp saying that I want to deal with female child soldiers. Well, that is credible. I need to. But I get there and they say, well, wait. This is what we want. So, LaTanya can remember when we talked about Michelle Fine and proximity to the subject, right? Am I going to be a ventriloquist? Or I'm going to put what's in my head next to somebody's head and heart and say, this is what I'm thinking. What you thinking? And how can I use my privilege in a responsible way? And realize that if you pull the knife out 6 inches, the knife is still in your body. That's the reason why you got to go slow, because you're in a hurry, because you got to get that knife out the body. You don't wait till 6 inches. That knife need to be gone, need to be filed down and turned into something else. Maybe a mirror that can reflect evil. Just like, what is that one Bible passage? Was it Saul or somebody? Solomon? I can't remember the people coming and that he didn't have any guns, but he told his folks to turn over their shields and go like this so they can fall off their horses. The reflection of them coming to kill somebody, just, it was like too big, and they fell off their horses, right? I can't remember who was that, but I'll never forget that. I think I saw it in the 10 Commandments, a movie. But so we have to realize that we got to get that knife out, so we go slow because we're in a hurry. We got to be able to interpret the noise. That is and we don't have the answer. We do that in community. you know, like, this is what I think. Like someone said, someone said earlier, what are the alternatives? Well, come on, let's sit down. Let's sit down. Because I don't have the answer. I have some variables. I have a question. Because the answers never come. They keep coming. It's the questions. Didn't somebody brilliant say that? It is not the answers, it's the questions. Some great literary scholar, I can't remember who said that. Was it Rilke or somebody? You know, it's not the answers, it's the questions. We got to continue critical inquiry, those kinds of things. And, you know, also with optimism, it's like, I know it can happen. I hope it can happen because this is what hope looks like. Watch me as I dance. Fred Hampton said, I don't know what, you know, if you don't know what to do, open your door, walk out, look in front of you, look to the side, and looking back. What you see you need to clean up, do it. You ain't got to come over to my community. Do it wherever you are. You want to deal with environmental science? You want to deal with where you're going recycling? You want to deal with public health as violence is public health? If you want to deal with changing your hair, do it with a sense of liberatory freedom. One of the folks in the refugee camp said, we want to, you know, create our own businesses. I can do hair. And she says, well, this is what you do. You can do hair under a tree. Anyway, I bought a beautician who was Ghanaian, one who's Liberian, who had locks, because I wanted them to understand it's okay if you wear a weave. I may rock a ponytail every now and then, but understand what you have naturally and appreciate that. Then, you know, you can do whatever you want to do, but understand the beauty of yourself naturally. You know, I'm not saying like just because you got a ponytail, I don't like you. Oh, come on, you know. Okay, that's about enough, Gilda.
Woo.
I told you I've been in the classroom in a long time. Latanya, I'm going.
I'm loving every single second. Every second.
Exactly. So. Oh, well, Gilda, what can I say? What can we say? I don't have words, but let's celebrate you. Let's honor you, and let's thank you for this most wonderful presentation. Thank you.